I'd like to share an experience I had in a game of TF2. It was about 9 p.m. on a Monday, I think 2 weeks ago, and I had decided to play a multiplayer match on TF2. I signed on and started up the automatic server selection for play modes. I felt like playing Capture the Flag, so I selected that option. My computer lagged a bit while I was searching for a server, which isn't uncommon for me, as my laptop is fairly distant from my router. But eventually, it found one. I've only been playing TF2 since a little after it became free, so I don't have a very big server history, nor experience with server mods or servers in general. But something seemed rather odd about this particular server. Once I gained access to the server, the loading screen came up with a bar in the bottom right. As the bar got to 70%, it jittered backwards and paused. It started going back and forth between 45 and 60%. The game froze after a few moments and I decided to force quit the game. I went to go get something to eat and I came back to the game started up. I decided to play for my server history. I noticed a new server added to the list, TF Playdead 905, or something along that line. After the events I'm about to explain, the server disappeared from my list, so I'm going on plain memory here. I tried the server and similar to before, the load bar jittered a bit, however it managed to complete this time. Usually, when you enter a custom server, there'll be some sort of splash page to welcome you to the server and advertise their site or briefly explain the rules. In the case of this server, the entire splash page was black. There was nothing on it. I started to think something was wrong with my graphics card, with all the strange things that was happening, but I decided to continue. The game loaded and I selected Pyro as my class and entered 2 for it. For those of you who have never played TF2, here is a brief explanation. It's a team-based online multiplayer FPS, and in this particular CTF mode, map 2 for it, you have 2 fairly large mills, separated by a little lagoon and a bridge, and an underground network of pipes that you can enter. The objective is to, obviously, capture the opponent's flag and return it to your base. For this server, there are 2 teams of 6. Upon my joining, both teams became full. The game was already mid-progress and everything was working normally. Our team, Blue, had already scored 1 point and we needed 2 more to win the game. The red team had 0 points. This particular game didn't have any time limit, and we seemed to be going back and forth for about 14 minutes with little to no progress. Occasionally, members of our team would type angry messages to the opposing team, accusing them of being cheap by having 4 engineers in their flag room, making it almost impossible to get their flag and making the game seem endless. Up until now, things have been relatively normal, until I started noticing that for about 5 minutes, I've been going around the level and I haven't seen a single one of my team members, nor any other players from the other team. People were still talking in chat, however, so it kind of took a while for it to sink in that I haven't seen anyone at all for over 5 minutes. I thought that it might be some sort of lag problem, so I asked the other players if they were having the same issue. The general response was nope. But one player said they haven't seen me for a bit either. About 6 more minutes passed and I was starting to grow pretty bored. I decided to make one more round throughout the level before I find another server. I left our fort and fell into the lagoon in the middle, and proceeded to enter the red team's pipe network. After the little room underground in the middle of the tunnel, there's really a long pipe that leads to a staircase going up to the base at the end. I noticed an enemy scout was standing there, but he wasn't moving, just standing there with his bat out staring at me. A strange form of relief swept over me, that the game started working again, and I charged at him, began to shoot him with my flare gun. The shots were going right through him. When I approached, he disappeared completely. Really bad lag, I thought to myself. I ascended the staircase, and as I entered the base, a strange static sound started to replace the other game's sounds. I made my way throughout their base, and as I got close to the flag room, the static got louder and louder, until I couldn't hear anything else in the game at all. This is when things started to get really weird. I asked if anyone else heard the static, and I did not receive any reply. No one has said a word since I saw the enemy scout in the pipe tunnel. I managed to get to the room adjacent to the flag room with 2 halls going into it. I could hear some sort of murmuring behind the static. As I went down one of the halls and turned the corner, I noticed that there was no flag room. It was black, like the hole leading into the game's void. All the textures and lighting were reduced to 100% black. I shot a couple of times and my bullets landed as if there were walls there, so I entered the room anyway. I saw the flag and I picked it up, and when I turned around to leave, there were no halls. Everything was black. The UI was still up on the screen and it said I had their flag, but there was nothing to the level. Old traces of the level had disappeared. I tried again to get an answer after explaining my problem. No response. I stood in the room, or lack thereof, for about 3 minutes until suddenly the game froze and the game ended. But the message didn't say anyone won or lost. The announcer's voice was all distorted. The scoreboard was broken. The loading screen quickly came up and it was downloading Play Dead 0090, or something along that line. It took about 17 minutes to download and it was a really big file. When it was finished, the black screen came up again. I went through the screens and selected Spy. The level loaded to something completely indescribable. I tried to save screenshots, but every picture I tried to get said error, and print screen didn't work either. The level looked rather black and white and very glitchy. The textures on the walls were all kind of like 8-bit blocks, but really distorted. It was almost like playing in a 3D version of a static snow screen. I went through the level and asked everyone, "What is this map?" But there was no response again. I checked the player list and other than my name, everybody else was listed as I am dead 1, I am dead 2, I am dead 3, etc. I've never encountered anything like this before, other than some prank games people made for fun, and hacks along the lines of that Majora's Mask one. But this is an online game with what I had thought secure servers. I decided to give it a few more minutes and explore the level, which was a really large maze of very oddly shaped tunnels. Also, there was no sound effects whatsoever. Nothing I did caused a sound. I eventually came to a really long tunnel with what I imagined was the middle of the level. The tunnel had darkness at the end of it, and it seemed almost endless as I was walking down for at least a minute in one direction with no change to the map. I decided to turn around and go back thinking the map was glitched. The moment I turned my camera around, I saw the enemy scout I saw earlier. Except something was very wrong with it. His eyes were black, his left arm was rather deformed and bent in impossible directions, and his legs reminded me of a crab. I almost jumped out of my seat and typed, "WTF is going on?" Hurried in the chat log, but there was no response. I stood there and stared at the strange scout. After several moments, the other players started talking, but all that appeared was corrupt garbage text. The scout quickly approached me in a sudden, though irregular fashion, and I heard a very, very loud burst of static, and all of a sudden it kicked me out of the server, and I went to check the server, and it was gone from my history. Naturally, I immediately shut off my game, and I haven't played it since. I think it was some sort of prank, but it was pretty creepy, and the game hacks don't usually creep me out. Hey guys, I hope that wasn't too creepy for you. Now that story was called Play Dead, written by Blue Falcon. If you enjoyed the video, make sure to like and subscribe, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Goodbye.